Welcome to the Leadership in Law podcast with host Marilyn Jenkins. Cut through the noise, get actionable insights and inspiring stories delivered straight to your ears. Your ultimate podcast for navigating the ever-changing world of law firm ownership. In each episode, we dive deep into the critical topics that matter most to you, from unlocking explosive growth to building a thriving team. We connect you with successful firm leaders and industry experts who share their proven strategies and hard-won wisdom. So, whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting your journey as a law firm owner, the Leadership in Law podcast is here to equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to build a successful and fulfilling legal practice.
Welcome to another episode of the Leadership in Law podcast. I'm your host, Marilyn Jenkins. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Lindsey Karnick, to the show today. Lindsey is the owner of Onward Psychological Services, a Colorado-based private practice providing psychotherapy to adult individuals and couples in Colorado, Massachusetts, Maryland, Maine, Connecticut, Nevada, Nebraska, and Rhode Island. In addition to therapy for anxiety, depression, anger, stress, and life stage changes, Lindsey presents workshops nationally at conventions, retreats, and other public and private events on practical tactical stress management and other concerns impacting professionals related to stress, work-life balance, effective communication, and more. She served as a counselor for a wide range of individuals from high-stress backgrounds. She's an avid reader, writer, runner, and lover of cereal straight out of the box, and loves spending time with her family and friends. I'm excited to have you here, Lindsey. Welcome.
Thanks, Marilyn. I'm excited to be here. Good morning.
Good morning. All right. So tell us a bit about how you got started.
How did I get started? I wanted to be a policy wonk. I wanted to be an upriver person who was involved in things at the sort of macro level that help make things better for other people. And I still trained as a therapist in addition to training in policy analysis. And when I got out of grad school, a tempting thing was dangled in front of me called a job with benefits. It's really, really glorious. And it was working in a maximum security prison for juvenile males, actually, as a unit counselor. And that changed my life. That was such an incredibly important experience to me in how I understand change and people's potential for change and people's capacity, not only to change for themselves, but how that change impacts their world around them and the larger world around them, sort of the ripple effect. And that's how I got started.
Wow. And then being able to work with them at that age, you can see really a big change in how it's going to affect their future.
You can, and you can also see some very interesting, informative things about change process. I think that as adults, we sort of know, but tend to forget. And that is, Marilyn, I'm sure you and I can both remember things people told us at some younger age that took years to mean anything to us. But it was there, right? It was there. And the fact that we had all those years to sort of marinate on that, whether it was up front of mind or not up front of mind. And then one day there's this sort of tipping point where you have an accumulation of experiences where one more experience sort of has this light bulb effect. And it could appear to be like rapid change, but it's really not. It's been a slow moving boulder for many, many, many years that just hasn't crested the top of the hill, and then suddenly it does, and you see really remarkable things. And that was one of the things that I found most important and moving about working with young people, especially some of whom were stuck in some pretty self-destructive patterns that were fed by their environments, broadly construed. And to be able to say, it's okay, one day this is going to germinate into something for you, and have a sense that it would, to be able to see the wheels turning and understand that we don't have to have instant gratification change this minute in order to say something important is going on here. And I think that's still true for most of us, right? The changes that we're looking for rarely happen like that. But that doesn't mean that we're not on a change trajectory every moment of every day.
Well, especially a lot of the processes are, we look at our mindset and for leadership and that sort of thing. And it is something that you're constantly trying to improve. Like Phil Jackson said, 1% better every day. So it's
Absolutely.
yes,
Absolutely. And 1% more knowledgeable every day, right? And whether you can immediately operationalize that knowledge is a different story, but you don't have to. A cumulative amalgamation of helpful knowledge is still really good whenever you do kind of crest that hill.
exactly. All data. But let's talk about your practical tactical stress management. Explain to that. That's your term that you've created. What are we talking about there?
Well, I was struck by this terrific irony initially when I was working in hospitals and medical hospitals, and they were building these remarkable fitness facilities in usually in the basements of these hospitals. Gorgeous. And they would have free weights and weight machines and aerobic space, step aerobic, space for yoga and step aerobics and mirrors and all the bands and equipments and things like this. And administration seemed to be perpetually baffled that no one was rushing after their 16-hour shift to go work out.
Right.
It seemed like a real mystery.
Yeah. Spend all this money. Why aren't you using it?
Right. It's so pretty. It's so shiny. It's so full of great things, which was all true. And there were things on offer. There were classes, and it was weird. People didn't seem to want to spend their lunch doing
Yeah.
it. And so that's when I really got sort of interested in this idea of how can we stop telling people to take care of themselves in ways that are already unfeasible to them.
Well,
It doesn't
see?
do much good. And if I love and I am nothing but excited for the fact that many companies now offer wellness credits to their employees as part of their healthcare plan. So they will reimburse a gym membership and provide subsidies for exercise things and many, many things that are good and helpful. And also, if you don't have time, you don't have time. And having a free gym membership doesn't make you have time. And that's what most people are time poor. And so to compound insult to injury, for many people, that becomes an additional source of stress. It's one more thing they're supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be taking care of myself. I should be working out X number of minutes a day or days a week, whatever the case may be. I should be figuring out how to fit this in along with my family life and my hobbies and all the things that I hope to do outside of work. And it becomes an additional stressor. Taking care of yourself, stress management, burnout prevention becomes an additional stressor. This is not how this should work, I don't think. So one of the things I've been interested in for a long time, and there's a gentleman named Chade Meng Tung. He was known as the Zen master of Google. And he wrote a wonderful book called Search Inside Yourself that talks about his experience as the Zen master of Google in the early years. And he talks about teaching useful skills to people, especially people, because he's mostly working with engineers, right? People who are not particularly keen on what a lot of many of the sort of take care of yourself wellness protocols have on offer. These people want really brass tacks, like I got to get back to my desk kind of stuff. And he was really good at cultivating that. And he had a particularly Eastern influence in terms of sort of mindfulness and ways one could integrate mindfulness into one's everyday life, which has become a very big thing, right? Everyday mindfulness. How do you do a little bit of that? And my experience has been that so many people are off put by associations with self care and mindfulness, even because it, for many people, conjures up the idea of, sitting in some sort of uncomfortable position, pretending to meditate and pretending to like it and pretending it's doing something for them. And what it's doing is creating frustration because
Right.
A, they don't feel like they have time. B, they don't think they're doing it right. C, they're supposed to feel relaxed. And really what they feel is anxious about looking at the clock. Like, can they get back to what they were doing before? So the idea for me has really been to offer people brass tacks. Here are 4 things you can do. They will take you 2 minutes or less. You can microdose with these all day long. You do not need special equipment. You do not need special time carve out. You do not need a costume. You do not need a facilitator. You do not need a room with certain things in it. Many of the accoutrements that we associate with traditional self-care activities, right? And this culture promotes, unfortunately, this all or nothing thinking about almost everything, right? And that is very destructive when it comes to self-care and burnout prevention in particular, because it's very easy to get the idea that if, that old joke, if there's no picture, didn't happen kind of a thing. And in this world, like if there's not a Strava category for it, or it's not Instagram worthy, it wasn't self-care, right? You didn't have like this ambient candle glow as you do your arm balance on the Angel Oak and Charleston, and it's like action, image of something zenful. I don't know. And so many people just throw up their hands and go like, look, I don't know what your life is like, but I know my life. I don't have an hour for yoga. I don't have an hour for this. I don't have an hour for that. So part of what practical tactical means is pushing back on this idea that you have to have an Instagram worthy picture or Strava category for it to have counted as something good for you. When we know taking 2 minutes at a time to do some certain kinds of breathing, or 2 minutes to do some kind of centering activities, or 2 minutes to do a little bit of progressive muscle relaxation goes miles. And you don't have to go anywhere for that. And you don't have to drive anywhere. And you don't have to pay for anything. You can just do it pretty much anywhere. And that's what I really value talking to people about.
That's very interesting because you're right. I mean, so many of us, with so much doom scrolling on social media, we see the Instagram and we don't stop to think that that's their highlight reel. That's not what's really going on in their life, and so we think that we're the only ones stressing out. Look at it, any attorney, any business owner. Well, that person doesn't have the problems I have.
Right, absolutely. And, I can't emphasize enough this, many attorneys have a streak of perfectionism. It often serves them very, very well professionally and in law school. But when folks with a streak of perfectionism, whether it's a small streak or a big streak, see pictures of people doing, Warrior 3 on a beach, and it's like, well, that's what I should be doing. And if I can't be doing that, then nuts to it, right? It becomes very dangerous all or nothing thinking about what we can or can't do. Or, we start in the ways that we've gamified fitness in so many ways. People want to see certain metrics on their watch because that's fun. Or they
Yes.
want certain, I don't know, badges, whatever these set of gamifications have been. We do not reward people enough for just doing the thing, starting the thing. You get full credit if you do 2 minutes, and you don't get extra credit for doing 60, which is in my mind would be a really powerful gamification, right? To be
Right.
like, you get your sticker no matter what. If you started doing the thing, how many more people would be willing to stand up from their desk and do 2 minutes of yoga postures, stretching, breathing, anything. If they didn't have the sense that like that doesn't count. I mean, that's not like really doing yoga. Yoga is like you go to a class and you get a mat, you get props, and there's a person and there's things. That's yoga. This is not yoga. And yoga practitioners, experienced, what I would call serious yoga practitioners, would say that's nonsense.
Yeah.
If you spend 60 seconds breathing deeply and being attentive to what's going on in the here and now, you've done the yoga. Congratulations. Or as I like to say when I used to teach yoga, I used to volunteer teach yoga, I'd say, you're doing it. You're doing the yoga by sitting there on the mat. You showed up. That's it. Full credit. Full credit.
Yes.
If you lay there the rest of the time, you've already gotten full credit. If you need to leave in 10 minutes, you got full credit. You're nailing it. That's great. Good for you. And really fighting back against that all or nothing thinking about what counts and what's useful or what not is useful. I live in Colorado where it's very easy to get caught up in that thinking because it's like everyone is so fit. like, and it's very easy for people to start discounting what they can do because there are people doing these things that are like so extreme, right? And so much more. And it's like, you haven't run a marathon? What are you doing with your time? People out here, it's pretty intense. But I think that's something we have to push back against.
I agree. I know that, when you talk about going to the gym, it's always, you spend an hour at the gym. But if you look at all the pre-designed workout programs, it's all about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So who said you have to go to the gym for an hour? If you are constructive about doing something, meditation can be a 2-minute thing. The thing is
Absolutely.
coming to now and being present. You talk about thought fusion when we make, our catastrophic thoughts. And we all have those as leaders. It's like, oh my God, the sky's falling, and your reactions for the rest of the day are literally reactions to that thought, as opposed to moving forward and being present in what's really going on. How do you
Yes.
work with that?
Noticing is always the first step, right? And I like to ask people to consider the minute they realize they're feeling amped. Because the one thing that we can reliably see, okay, is how we're feeling physically. A lot of times we're fused with our thoughts to the point where we're just caught up in a storyline about the way things are and we can't see it yet, right? We're too wound up, we're too much in it. But we can immediately detect our body. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I like to suggest for people, firstly, that they sort of, you remember stop, drop, and roll from grade school.
Right.
If you smell smoke, I like to suggest kind of a stop, drop, and roll approach to smelling smoke, emotionally speaking. And that is the minute you feel, you sort of go, oh, wait, it's just hang on. Just hang on. Okay. And if you can have the presence of mind to take a pause, you pull out a pen and anything you can write on. It doesn't matter if it's the back of a receipt, a cocktail napkin, a piece of junk mail, or a draft in your will. It doesn't matter. This is not for posterity. Okay. It's simply the act of writing things down. And I ask people to ask themselves 2 questions. And this is something that it's really helpful. You can write down these 2 questions on a Post-it note and just stick it behind your monitor so it's there for you all the time. So you don't have to come up with this stuff, right? Or you stick it on your bathroom mirror. And the questions are essentially, 1, is this what's happening right now? Is this what's happening right now? That's it. Okay. And when we've answered the question, is this happening right now? And the answer is always no. It's always no, right? The things, Marilyn, that are possibly bothering you right now are not happening right now in that office. You are sitting there in a climate controlled environment, in a very comfortable looking chair with nice lighting. I bet the temperature is great. You look very comfortable, right? You have your familiar setup. Whatever it is that is bothering you is not actually happening right now. Okay. It's a hard question, right?
It is. Yeah. I hadn't
The
thought of it that
only
way.
way it bothers us is that we've drug it into this moment, into that chair and that lovely setting with that climate controlled temperature. And it's only brought into that moment through thinking.
Right.
That's it.
Okay. Sure.
Otherwise, it's not there. It does not exist in that space, wherever it is that you are. Yeah.
Okay. And it's so you would say it's like anxiety, fearing the future is not actually what's happening right now. So
100%
acknowledging
of anxiety is about the past or the future. 100%. We could probably have a philosophical sort of discussion about 1% or maybe in the present, maybe, right? But, and there are people who have written very eloquently about this, about anxiety is always a story that we're telling ourselves about what's about to happen or what already happened. It's
Sure.
not what's happening. Right.
Sure.
So we could take a very simple, concrete example of that. For example, physical pain, right? Physical pain, if you have a scale of 0 to 10, and let's say something's bothering you, your shoulder's bothering you right now. Okay. And let's just say it's a 3. Okay. If we were to be able to give you a retinal scan and say, what is your pain level without asking you. Okay. And we could rank it as a 3. Okay. We could also then ask you, Marilyn, what's your pain like? And you'd be like a 6. And we go, oh, interesting. She thinks she's experiencing a 6, but we objectively know it's only a 3. Why is that? And the answer is time and time again, because what would be escalating the pain for you is you thinking to yourself something along the lines of, and what if I have to have surgery? And what if this is a rotator cuff tear? And my mom had that surgery and she was laid up for a year and then she had to, it would be a narrative about the pain, not the pain itself, that we then broadly refer to as the pain, right? It's not the physical. It includes this emotional pain element, which is made up of catastrophic thinking about the future or the past, something that's already happened. But the pain in the present is just a 3.
Makes sense. Yeah,
It
makes
just a 3.
sense. Because we always build things. There's so much more into it. The what ifs, the catastrophic. I love the way that you use that word. Yeah, we have these thoughts.
we come by it naturally, right? I mean, we got to be the dominant species on the food chain by wondering what's going to go wrong next and then prepping. Like, squirrel is, I mean, it's a problem. And it served us really well in a lot of ways, but we can't turn it off. We are virtually incapable of turning it off. This sort of prepper mentality about
Yes.
everything, right? And we've gotten so, these prefrontal cortexes and the places with the executive functioning and our ability to abstract, about things that might go wrong is so past the point of survival at this point, right? I mean, abstracting. Look, when you live out on the savannah or whatever, and a wild animal or a storm might end you, it's good to be like, "Well, I wonder if that's a storm coming. Maybe I should build a shelter just on the off case. I don't know, right?
Right.
That's all good. Very few of us are living in those conditions right now, right? But the
Correct.
equipment, the hardware is so old, and the software updates only kind of stick. There's this part of us running, it's like running DOS, and it's like part of us is like, I gotta worry about what my boss might say next Tuesday, even though that's a long way away from storms coming, might need to build a shelter in terms of threat level.
Yeah.
But we
Right.
don't recognize it as such. It's all something that might go down later, that might end me. And we have very little granularity or nuance about what it means in modern life to be ended. Getting ended is getting eaten by a predator. Everything
Right.
after that is pretty negotiable, right?
Right.
And
Right.
our nervous systems don't operate like that. They are just not built for subtlety and granularity, which is how we end up in those catastrophic thinking narratives that cause us, of course, literal physical distress because the nervous system doesn't know the difference. The nervous system says, like, you're telling me there's a threat. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Okay. It's on.
Fight
Right.
or flight. Yeah.
And nervous system is even less granular and nuanced than the thinking equipment is, right? So the nervous system is just like this on-off toggle switch. It's either on or it's off. And whether you're freaking out about the grocery store being out of your favorite soda or you're freaking out about a predator ending you, either way, the grocery store is like, "What?" Or the nervous is like, wow, this is on, right?
Very cool. So yes, we all do that. And with stress and anxiety, I mean, especially in a leadership role or business owner, that we all do that. So we're looking at, and the one thing that my coach talks about is following the data. Look at the data.
Yes.
So your first question is this happening in real time? Is this really happening right now? What is your second question to yourself about that to get us back centered?
Yeah. The second question is whether it is or is not happening in real time. And P.S. it never is
Right.
what am I responding to? Am I responding to what's happening, AKA the data? Or am I reacting to something else? Because the something else is usually this narrative we've gotten caught up in. So let me give you a really interesting example of this that involves both catastrophizing and cognitive fusion. Okay, which is literally when you start acting in real time according to something that's happening in your imagination. You have fused with a purely cognitive experience. And now you're
Well,
living. That's why it's called
okay.
cognitive fusion. So a great example, and this happens to most people I know, myself included, quite frankly, on a regular basis, and we can talk about it because it's kind of funny and most people can relate. Many of us care deeply about like not hurting people's feelings, right? We don't want to go through life stepping on people's toes, hurting people's feelings, especially the ones we care about, but generally not anybody, right?
Right.
Most people, I would hazard a guess to say women in particular, have this experience where we will suddenly get some piece of data, right, from the world around us, and we'll go, uh-oh, I wonder if she's mad at me. Her being friend, partner, doesn't matter, right? Somebody, boss, colleague. I
Yeah.
wonder if she's mad at me. She might be mad at me. We start entertaining this thought. She might be mad at me, which could be true under any given conditions, right? Somebody might be mad at you. Absolutely, is absolutely true. What if she's offended? I might have offended her, something along these lines. And this thing happens, this slide. We very quickly, with no additional input from the world around us, no additional data points, go from, it's a subtle but important difference, she might be mad at me, to she is mad at me. And all of a sudden, without confirmation of any kind, We have gone to this place of like, oh, she is mad at me. She is mad at me. That person is mad at me. She's offended. She's upset. She's this, she's that. And with every passing moment that this person doesn't call or text or something like this becomes the data for us that, yep, it's true. Look, it's
Yes.
happening. Right?
Right. I mean, and especially if you grew up with a passive aggressive parent,
Oh, for sure.
you're absolutely geared to go there.
Yes. Wired for sound.
Yeah,
Wired for
exactly.
sound. Geared to go there. I love that. Yes, it's so true. And so with every passing moment, we sort of are like interpreting data around us. For example, well, she hasn't texted me in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 2 days or whatever it is. That must confirm this narrative that I have that I made up. That did not come from this person, right? This is
Right.
my
There's no
interpretation.
data. There's no
Point.
data.
Right.
Exactly.
It's complete extrapolation of the data points, right? This is like saying like every constellation, you're like, oh, there's the line. And I'm like, no, here's the monster truck. I mean, you can make those points into whatever you want. You can connect those dots however you want. It doesn't make it true, right? But you
Right.
do it. And so then as we become more sort of invested in the storyline of like, oh my gosh, she is mad at me. Oh my gosh, she is offended. Our bodies start to react accordingly, right? Our fight or flight system starts to get amped. We get a little adrenaline. And that becomes a confirmation point. See, I can feel it.
Yes.
Something's off. I can, yeah, because your fight or flight system is like slowly ratcheting up, right? To the flip on. And we then have this emotional or reasoning effect, which is like, because I feel like something's wrong, it means something is wrong. And
I
now
can't make it as a
it does not make it so, not one time, right? I mean,
Right.
I've bought lottery tickets in my life. It's my one vice. I have the lottery ticket. And every time I buy one, I'll tell you what, it feels like a winner to the depths of my soul. And every single one, right? You're
Yeah.
up in your mind. You're buying plane tickets.
What am I going to do when I hit them? Yeah, exactly. I buy them every now and then. That's true.
This is
Yep.
it.
This is the one.
Right? What? Maryland, this may shock you. It's not happened one time.
Hey, I think I won $16 one time. But
You're
yeah,
ahead of me. You are ahead of me. I may have won $16 like in $1 increments over the years. But I am impressed with it. That's a jackpot in my mind.
yeah, exactly. It is one of those things that you only borrowed it because you turned it around and bought another lottery ticket with it.
100%.
Wow, you're right. I mean, it is interesting how we all do that, where we just
Yeah.
start spiraling on something that we have no data to confirm.
Yes. Yes. And part of that, and again, we all do it. Lots of us do it lots of the time, right? Is because
Right.
there's something really comforting in not, we would rather be like, oh no, she's mad at me than wonder if she's mad at me. We like security and certainty, and we would rather decide for sure that someone's mad so that we can decide what we're going to do as opposed to sit in a gray area. We find gray areas of like, is she mad at me? Very much more distressing than she is mad at me. Because she is mad at me. Oh, I can make an action plan on that. I'm going to send flowers, call, whatever the case may be. I'm going to start doing stuff. That's a problem I can attack and solve. But being open to a place of not knowing, sitting in a place of like, ooh, I don't know, she might be mad at me, is very uncomfortable for most of us. And so we actually prefer to go down the rabbit hole of she is mad at me because we like certainty more than we like uncertainty, even if it's a quote bad certainty. She is mad at me.
So in that instance, would those two questions still come into play? Is this really happening? Because if you think she's mad at me, is it really happening? I need to
Well,
make that phone call or find out.
Yeah,
If that's
that's a great question. And the answer is yes. Because again, if you can pause and ask yourself, is she mad at me? That should lead you to like, is this happening? Right.
Right.
And you say like, yes. And sometimes this is what's helpful about working with a therapist, right? Because they can help you with these sort of Socratic exchanges that it's hard to have with yourself when you're first learning. Eventually the idea should be is that you should be able to do this with yourself, right? But
Right.
I would say to you, I would say to myself, I would say to Ever, how do you know? And you would go, because I feel bad and it feels true. And I'd be like, okay, what else? Right. And you'd be like, because she hasn't called in 2 days. And I'd be like, okay, is that what that means? And you
Has she
might
ever
say,
not called in 2 days?
right. And you might say, well, I mean, no, but probably. And I go, oh, wait, so probably means there's room for that's not an inevitability. And we would eventually work our way around to this space of great space where you or I or whoever we're talking to here would be able to say, like, okay, yeah, actually, that could mean a lot of things. That could mean a whole lot of things, including not limited to she's in the hospital. Something in her life has gone terribly wrong. She's transitioning phones and it's switching from Android to iPhone. It all went wrong, as it so often does, or, whatever.
Yes.
There are a million reasons, including it's just not that deep. She's busy.
Yeah.
And most of us, when we reality test these kinds of situations that we're talking about, if we think about historically, the times when we've got really wrapped around the axle about like, is somebody upset with me? The answer is
Yeah.
then.
Right. Right. And again, a phone call would be, could fix that. Phones go both
100%.
ways.
100%. 100%. Yes. So asking yourself, is it happening, includes the sub questions. Well, if you say yes, what are you referring to? Is it happening that you're upset right now? Oh yeah, that's happening. But that doesn't mean the other thing is happening. Like she is mad at you, right? What can we know and what can we not know about what is happening and what's not happening? Because we can't know in this scenario that you and I are sort of imagining right now that this person is mad. You can't know. All you know is she hasn't called.
Right.
That's the only thing you know, capital K, know, is that in fact, you don't even know that. Your cell could be broken. Maybe you're not getting calls. You don't even know that she hasn't called, right? Who
Mhm.
knows? So asking myself, is this happening, is really maybe another way of saying, what do I know?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do I know could include, I feel like something's really wrong. You could know that. But to say, I feel like something's really wrong is to acknowledge a vast difference between I feel like something's really wrong and something is really wrong.
So that's accepting the fact that I made it permanent. I made it definite as opposed to a
Yes.
gray area.
Which makes a huge difference, right? Because you and I could think through scenarios here of all sort of stakes levels. And I think this is important when it comes to leadership. And when we find ourselves in these positions of duress, different scenarios certainly have different stakes, right?
Mhm. Right.
But regardless, well, let's take the example we're using. Going with option A, she might be mad at me, versus option B, she is mad at me. Those are going to feel a lot different depending on which one you get attached to.
Okay. Right.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, in the same sense that if you imagine somebody like a little kid on a playground hyping up another little kid, like a little kid in your ear talking trash is going to hype you up more than one not doing
Right.
It's very simple, right? And when we attach to these ideas of certainty and what we know, right, it is a little voice that is now hyping us up in one direction or another or not. And one of the things that we can make a choice about globally, actually, and this is above and beyond what we know or don't know, is do we want to be in a position where we are hyping ourselves up or not? Because that's a behavioral choice that each of us can make every single minute of the day. And that has nothing to do with is something true or false. True or false is a whole other issue.
Yeah.
The question
Correct.
is, do you want to hype yourself up or not? Is that helpful to you or unhelpful? Is it constructive or destructive? Is it
Yeah.
adding to your quality of life and your quality of leadership, or is it subtracting? Not is the content true or false.
Interesting. Yes. I absolutely agree that looking at it from a different, and you have to like to be at the point, catch yourself early enough that you can stop and think it through and ask this question before you
Yes.
get, spun out on something.
Yes. Although I would also say that I would encourage people greatly in the same way that I would encourage people to uh, fully embrace 2 minutes of yoga or mindfulness or breathing or Zen garden tending, whatever the thing is. I think it's important not to have all or nothing thinking about it's too late, I've gotten wound up. It's
Okay.
never too late. It is never too late to go in a different direction. And I think it's very easy for us to say, like, oh, I'm already there, right? I'm already amped, or I already maybe spun off on someone a little bit, or I already sent that email, or something is done. And so it's done. And I would say that is absolutely does not have to be true.
I agree with that because if it's not constructive, you can always turn it around.
100%, 100%. And that means with yourself, that means with other people. And, there's an element, I think, of real compassion that has to come into play there. Sometimes people have this interesting inclination to almost self-punish by sort of taking this stance, whether they realize it or not, like, I did it, so now I'm going to live with it because that's what I did, or it's too late. I mean, it's too late as a self-punishing stance.
And I can say that can go back to, there's stories you have to work through that you were given as a child. And,
Absolutely.
and that just, for me, that was one, it's just, it's too late, whatever, you did it, then you have to accept it, live with
It's
it.
on your record. You have a
Yeah,
rap sheet now.
exactly. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I do like that idea that it's never too late. And that's true. We're adults. We control this stuff. We just have to remember that we
Yes.
control how we react and move forward. So I agree.
Yes. And that other adults, whether you're close to them or not close to them, are often having the same experience, right? And then in a way, being open to letting yourself off the hook, being open to letting yourself say, "Ooh, actually, I'm going to take a redo on that to the best of my ability," is a wonderful gift that you give to other people because you are modeling for other people how to be compassionate with themselves when they make a mistake or when they do something out of pocket or snap off because they're emotionally agitated or whatever the case may be. And most adults are struggling with the same things in terms of what we're talking about. Most adults, have, who was it? I don't remember what political campaign it was where somebody called somebody a waffler. And that became, it was an American political campaign. Maybe it was Romney, somebody called somebody a waffler. And that was like, oh, the worst thing you could be is a waffler, which is somebody who like changes their mind. Right. And I think we often like have this strange sense that like there's some sort of lack of chivalry in sort of softening with yourself and letting yourself off the hook and going, no, I have new information and I, given the new data points, I feel differently about that. Or given the new data points, I actually don't think I did do the right thing in that situation. Or given the new data points, I'm sorry, that's how I responded to you or y'all or the
Yeah.
situation or the scenario, whatever the case may be. And I think, one of the things that I hope the most for people is that they give themselves the opportunity to experience that kind of softness from themselves and also model that for other people because most people are struggling with that. And many people struggle to ask for a redo because they think it looks like a sign of admission of some kind of guilt
Or weakness.
or weakness, right? And B, they feel like they ought to live with it. And that's just the price they're going to pay is, kind of having that on their mind for the next 6 months or whatever the case may be until things sort of numbs out and it becomes a dull ache instead of a sharp slice. And we don't have to live like that.
No, I think it's important to give yourself grace about, moving forward, making changes and corrections at times. And, being the leader that can be that in front of your team shows that type of culture. So I
Yes.
bring it to the people around you.
And it makes people feel safe, right?
Yes.
Like people want to know because we're all the same. Everybody's fighting the same demons. Everybody's struggling with the same battles, right? Maybe not at the same time and maybe not in the same intensity intervals, but ultimately we're all fighting the same things. And so to the degree to which you can show a little bit of compassion with yourself, of softness towards error or acceptance of error, acceptance of fallibility, you are letting other people off the hook too. And that's what you want as a leader, right? You don't
Right.
want people to bury mistakes and you find out about it a year later in the bottom of some spreadsheet. That's not good. You want people to feel safe to come forward and say, I made a mistake and we need to fix it now. And if they're
Yes.
fearful that they're going to have their feet held to the fire actively or passively for the next 2 months and be shunned or be punished in some way, even if that's just purely emotionally or socially, which is most people would rather be fined, right? Big bucks than emotionally or socially shunned, right?
Right.
And so creating a culture in which they think, oh, this person's money is where their mouth is. They don't just say that they want us to feel comfortable coming forward and saying, oops, I made a mistake and I want to fix it now before it gets away from us, right?
Right.
You have to model that because you can say things all day long, but people watch and people will not hear what you say if what you are doing is sending a different message.
That
But
is true.
telling people this is a safe space, whatever safety it is we're referring to, right? And then showing up in a way that messages it's not a safe space. Nobody will hear you say, no matter how bold the print is on the memo, saying we support people who fill in the blank, that they won't matter.
No.
If the actions don't match that.
I agree. Absolutely. This has been really great. I've really enjoyed this conversation and I love the 2 questions. Thank you so much for that. I know the listeners are probably going to want to reach out to you, connect with you. Where is the best place that they can reach and connect with you?
They can find me in multiple places on my website, which is Onward Services.com. That's Onward Psych, PSYCH services.com. There's a contact me form. There's an email address. I have a phone that I answer. I use it as a phone. Call me.
Wow.
My phone number is 720-362-8164. I had to look at that. I don't know my own phone number, but I have it and I answer it. I just want to make that clear. And they can also find me on Instagram. I like to make on Wednesdays, I release what I call practical tactical videos. And they're very short, very fun videos that are practical tactical illustrations of how to utilize concepts that will make your life better in very concrete ways. And they're super fun. I hope you'll check them out. I love making them. They absolutely delight me. It's a creative outlet. And these are analogies and examples that have resonated with people over a long course of time in terms of illustrating some of these concepts that have been really useful.
Very cool. Yeah, we'll make sure that all of those URLs get in the show notes. And I'm going to go check out your Instagram. I'm going to check out the videos. It's going to be great.
Wonderful.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been very exciting.
My pleasure. It's been absolutely a delight.
Thanks for joining me today for this episode. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do 2 things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to discover this podcast. Second, you can connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm currently learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take the next step with a digital strategist to help you grow your law firm, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to lawmarketingzone.com to book a call with me. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, thanks for listening to Leadership in Law Podcast, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Leadership in Law Podcast. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of law firm owners out there facing similar challenges and striving for the same success. Head over to our website at lawmarketingzone.com. From there, connect with other listeners, access valuable resources, and stay up to date on the latest episodes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, keep leading with vision and keep growing your firm.